About 4 or 5 years ago, I had a student who invited me to come here and preach. He was preaching in his home church, and he sort of felt a little skittish about it. And so he wanted me to come. I came. I was on a Sunday night, and he got up, and he began to apologize for the sermon. That was his opener. I don't know if I've studied enough. And he was sort of leafing through. He goes, I don't know if I picked the right text. He kept saying that over and over. So afterwards, we go out to eat. And I said something to the effect of, the sermon was awesome. And it really was. Great content. He unpacked the text wonderfully. I said, stop apologizing. Stop. Nobody wants you to peel the curtain back like that. And it just seemed to be too much. There's a concept behind this that I'll talk about someday. But the whole point was that I'm going to violate my own rule. This is probably the 7th recording of this lecture that I'm making. I'm trying to upload audio files to YouTube, figuring that they're smaller. You can carry them on your phone if you need to, and make life much simpler, and you don't have to look at this. Well, for some reason, everything I've tried, everything, doesn't work. So I do apologize for the nature of this and the fact that I'm ready to punch some technology nerd in the face until there's blood on my knuckles. I can't stand technology. It is as evil. It's designed for people who don't think logically. So anyways, why are there 21 formats? Why can't I just record it and upload it? Just record it, upload it. That's it. So I'm going to do this again. This is the lecture. Sorry. But this is the lecture on the Mars Hill Project. The document that you have, that I've sent to you, is a PDF explaining what the Mars Hill Project is. If you have about 13 to 15 minutes, this will make your life much easier for knowing why what we do and the protocols for getting it done. It is a unique project, and it's something for which I will never apologize. Every single class that I teach, we have a field trip built in. And we do so by a good grade. I mean, it's a 25% of your grade, so to speak. It is important. It's based on the concept. Jesus said, go ye to all the world, preach the gospel to every creature. It was the last thing he told us as the going away. Even Acts 1:8, go to all the world, Jerusalem, Judea, and Samaria, and the uttermost parts of the world. It's important. And one of the faxioms that I have used, it's the combination of fact and axiom. One of the faxioms that I use at the beginning of every class is an explanation of this. God said, go to all the world and preach the gospel to every creature. Most of us never do. We stay within 200 miles of our home. And because of that, God said, go to all the world. We didn't. So he sent the world here. The nature, the character, the makeup of America is so vastly different than it was even a generation and a half ago. My people, the olive-skinned, have moved here 3 times faster than any other people group except for the Hispanics. We keep coming. And so, you as a leader, you as a Christian, you as a person with a voice, you got one of 2 options. Either learn how to share the gospel with them, or become increasingly irrelevant and get more and more blood on your hands. I would rather choose the former than the latter. I think it's important. And thus, it's more important, if you see the part where on the document you have to fill in the blanks. I always think it's more important to speak to them than speak about them. Because I was saved out of Islam and had never been in a church, I had a natural curiosity for what a church was like. And comparing it to everything I knew about Christians, I only knew from what I had been taught in the mosque or the masjid. Now I was seeing it face to face, and I felt like so much was so wrong. So much was incorrect and biased. Most Christians, if we go on vacation, what we do is this. We'll even tell the pastor, if we go to church at all, we'll tell the pastor, hey, preacher, I'll bring you back a bulletin from another Baptist church. That to me seems like a missed opportunity. Why not go to something that's uncomfortable, awkward, that you have no idea what the service is going to look like? Why not go to a people group or a cult or a religion that needs the gospel, but it needs people to understand the difference between the various groups, and thus that's the Mars Hill Project. In Acts 17, beginning in verse 16, the Apostle Paul, the Bible says he's furious. He's infuriated because he sees people who are very superstitious. He sees that they've got idols throughout the entire city of Athens. And he gets up. They invite him to come to the Areopagus. And he gets up on Mars Hill and he begins by preaching, guys, I've seen that you're very religious. The King James word is superstitious. He goes, I see that you guys are very religious because I see you have all these idols. And you even have one to the unknown God. And then he goes in. He says, well, the one that you don't know about, the one that you in ignorance are talking about, I'm going to preach him to you. And who does he do this with? Well, right there, right before the sermon, that begins in 23, I think, verse 23. Right there before the sermon, he says, the Bible says that he goes among the Greeks, he goes to the synagogues with the devout Jews, and he goes to the souk. That's an outdoor market. That's another place to fill in. So every semester, we do the same thing. Every semester, you get to pick it. We get to go to it. We are privileged to live in the DFW Metroplex. And this video is not just for the students who are taking me in person, undergrad or grad, but also to those who are taking it by distance, because you're going to do it in your context. And I've even given you the notes to explain how we do it. So, if you will, every semester, for those who live close enough, you're going to be participating by going on a field trip with me. We have the 16 major world religions, which I'll explain in another lecture. Temples, synagogues, masjids, sites of worship. So we will go, you will pick, and you will report about the Mars Hill trip you made. On the subsequent pages, I'm showing you the various forms of world religions, various kinds of cults. So this document is prepared to explain to you how we go about doing this. It is, in fact, prepared for those who don't live near us, so that it can be explained in a little different manner. But it's also prepared for those who are here who have never gone into a temple or a cult and never really been confronted with a people group in a worship service that they're worshiping a false god in a different group. If in fact heaven is real, and it is, and hell is real, and it is, then what they're talking about and how you are presenting the gospel has eternal consequences. So here's the Mars Hill Report. Here are the rules that I lay out for you. Number one, I lay out the rules. It's got to be related to the class. And thankfully, here at Arlington Baptist University, virtually everything I teach is tied to discipleship and evangelism, missions and evangelism, confronting a world that needs the gospel, confronting people for whom Christ died. And no apologies. I believe Christ died for the world. And since he did, they're not the enemy. This isn't about winning a fight. It's about winning a convert. And it's vitally important to know the difference between, say, a Hindu and a Buddhist, even though they come from the same system. Even though Siddhartha Gautama, the Buddhist, came out of Hinduism, was a prince in Hinduism, the belief system he established was so different that when you're sharing the gospel with a Buddhist, you have to know subtle differences, different ways to share. So, number one, it's got to be related. Number two, in preparation for it, you will pick a place. And when you pick a place, you have to study that religion. Now, again, you can study the massive part. I do a thing called global. G stands for God, L leaders, O overview, B books, etc. But you don't have to study all that. You can know a synopsis, just know enough what they think about God, but more importantly, the four basic needs, the four basic questions that they're trying to answer. You have to know it just in the context of what we do. Ravi Zacharias expertly unpacks this. Before he died, he called them the four major needs, the four impulses of every human being. If you were going to start a religion based on worshiping your cat or a salamander, you have to establish these four things. Where did I come from? Where am I going? Why am I here? And what do I do with sin or pain or evil, sickness, ethics? Here's what they mean. Where did I come from is an issue of origins. And it's explaining your identity. Where am I going isn't necessarily about heaven or hell, because there are religions that believe in reincarnation. There are some secular religions where we just go into nothingness. But we are talking about legacy. What do I leave behind? What does that religion teach about what's back there? What marks my life? 3, why am I here? My purpose. And it's tied to, number 3 is tied to number 4, which is, how do I live? How do I deal with sin, sickness, guilt, even groups that don't define sin or don't believe in it, like in Hinduism? They have to answer guilt. They have to deal with guilt. And how do I live with my neighbor? It's an ethic, isn't it? So if you can settle those 4 things, whatever religion you choose, Rastafarianism, for instance, what is their answer to where did I come from? Why am I here? Where am I going? And how do I live? That's what we're doing. You're preparing your heart to walk in for what is absolutely spiritual warfare. When you're studying these religions, you're studying those 4 major questions. It's all it is just preparing you to walk in whenever the date that we've settled. We'll come to that next. How to lead somebody to Christ is the 3rd part of it. You'll be amazed. I've been doing this for a quarter of a century. There's very few temples, very few religions that I haven't been to. I've got a list that I want to be able to get to someday and finish them out. But I've been to most of them over the course of these years, and you'll be amazed at the number of opportunities God gives you. How about this? Let me move past that for a second and go to preparation. For those of you who are overseas or in another part of the country, what do you do to set up a Mars Hill project? What I literally do is I start on my computer. Now, it used to be back in the day, I'd use the phone book, but you take your computer and you type in temples near me. Most beautiful temples in, and then you name your major city. You'll find Hindu, Buddhist meditation centers, masjids, mosques. As an example, there are 62 masjid or masala or madrasa, Islamic study centers, outdoor prayer areas, or actual mosques in DFW. And then add to that, there are 4 Shia mosques. And there are 2 Entops. There are 2 Sufi celebration centers. Again, we're privileged in DFW because all 16 major world religions are represented here. Not a lot of places in America do, but you've got them near you, wherever you're at. Even if you live way out in the country, I promise you, you'll have something near you, synagogue, etc. So I looked them up, and what I'm going to ask you to give me is which sect. Say it's a mosque. What kind of mosque? Sunni, Shia, Sufi. It'll tell you. Hinduism. You got Veda, the Vedic groups. So you got Vishnites and Shivites and those who are followers of Ganesh. You've got different subgroups. Mormons. You've got the Latter-day Saints, but you've also got the FLDS, Fundamentalist Latter-day Saints. You've got the Reformed Fundamentalist Latter-day Saints. So you find out on your computer which form, which sect, which, if you can use this term, denomination do they represent. You call them up. If their phone number is not listed, because there are some places that are very suspicious. What's interesting is we haven't really handled this that much. There's only a very few that don't believe in outreach, what we would call evangelism. Druze, they're one of them. They're very secretive. But they'll have a website, they'll have a phone number and an email. Then they'll have a leader. You call up and you ask to speak with the leader. The imam, that's an Islamic pastor, or a Hindu priest or a Buddhist monk, whatever. And then the important point that I'm making to you, specifically to those of you who are doing this on your own, never surprise them. Never make them feel like they're being mugged. Announce you're coming. Very few of them will be hostile. In the cults, there will be some. The gay churches, very hostile sometimes. But by and large, the religions, they're not. They're surprised. They have an outreach leader who, here we are calling them and saying, look, I'm a student at Arlington Baptist University. I'm in the master's program, or I'm in the undergraduate program. And one of my assignments is to attend a service or to get a tour by a leader of that temple or that group. You set up a time. A couple of rules that I'll give you afterwards, but that's it. You're going to come in. He's going to answer your questions, and you get to answer his or hers. That's why we got the gospel of things at the very end. I don't care how you learn it. 4 spiritual laws, Roman road, ABC. I don't care. I just want you to be familiar enough to know how to lead somebody to Jesus. I don't require the memorization of verses yet. But if I start seeing groups that are, a group of students that are a little lazier than others, I might. Yeah, sure. Or they're not quite prepared. That's fine. I'll handle that. I want you to know, as simple as admit you're a sinner, believe in the Lord Jesus Christ, and confess him as Lord, surrender your life over to him. Something as simple as that, and knowing the verses, you will get an opportunity in their context to share about grace, etc. I'm telling you. That's why I think it's so fascinating. Attending an iftar, attending some holy day that they celebrate. So I tell you that God will give you that chance. He'll even get you to return. I've had one that invited me back and let me talk and take questions from among their people. That was recently. That was here in Dallas. And so I'm telling you it'll happen. I'm telling you that it's very possible. All right. So here's what I put under preparation. I use the MAP program. I set up a time. I get their name, maybe even a cell phone number. I give them my cell phone number. And then I'm on time when I show up. Here's the rules when you get there, and then we'll talk about the report. If you're going with a group, and I would encourage you, bring a deacon or Sunday school teacher. Somebody will be interested, I promise you, in what you do. Somebody will be interested. They will want to know. Wait a minute, you're going to a what? Well, I'm going to an Eastern Orthodox church. I'm going to a Greek Orthodox church. And they'll go, I've never been to that. I've never been to a Catholic Mass or whatever. Great, let's do it. So they go with you. But if they go with you, when you walk in, if you're sitting for a service, you can't sit together. You have to separate. Again, some of them are hostile. Like I said, we've had lesbians kiss in front of us. I had one guy, because I'm former Muslim, he was very hostile because he was a present Muslim. Most of them aren't going to be that way. But when you go and when you get the tour, and when you start asking your questions, I ask questions that are relevant to my curiosity. Remember, if you remember correctly, I talked about the Socratic method in learning. Socrates always asked questions. It's based on curiosity. And so I'll say, how do you dress differently than the other, Jain, Sikh, Taoists? When do you pray? How does that look? If you're not coming to a service, if you're actually coming just to get the tour, you may not see the service. There's very few times, however, that they won't have some public service. There are a few. Zoroastrians, they have a meeting time. It's usually around holidays. But sometimes especially if you're working in a church, you may not be able to pull that off. And so you can't go on a Sunday. And it may wipe out your Saturdays, which means that's Jehovah's Witnesses and Seventh-day Adventists. And now you got an issue. Muslims at Friday, Jumiat. But Hindus are every day. I think Buddhists, it's not necessarily a service unless it's Tibetan Buddhism, because they have the prayer, that's where they roll the prayer wheel. But they'll let you see something. I think the Mormons won't let you in to the service. They basically give you the foyer tour, but you're not allowed to watch them baptize for the dead or anything of that. So you get there and you start asking them questions. Hopefully they'll reciprocate and ask you questions. And when they do, that's where you can share Christ. What I find interesting is a lot of them have no contact with or context in Christianity. For instance, if you offer them a Bible, many of them, no, I can't accept that. But in this context, they will. If you say something to the effect of, They've got a Haggadah. It's a Jewish synagogue, and they have a prayer book. Can I purchase that? Can I buy that? Or whatever. Or they'll gift you. And when they gift you something, that's a great chance for you to pull out a Gospel of John, Gospel of Mark, the book of Romans is a pamphlet, and you go, I will read yours if you will do me the honor of reading mine. You can even sign it to them and thank them for their kindness and their courtesy. All of a sudden, you've got the Bible in the hand, in their context, and you're sharing the words. It's astonishing. It is amazing, and it's wonderful. So let's talk about this report, the actual report. Mars Hill report is 2 pages. You ask the questions that 1 page front and back or 2 pages front and back. And that's your call. If it's handwritten, I'd say I'd probably go 2 pages front and back, because here's the questions you're going to answer for your Mars Hill report. Number 1, I want to know how you made contact and context. In the case of the students who are in my class, I'm taking care of that. So you can simply say, well, we made this time, we made this date. You get there, and here's what I'm asking. You turn it in on the last day of our class. If you're taking an 8-week course with me, you already know I don't start necessarily on time. I don't end necessarily on time. But whatever our stated time is, that last day is when it's due. Same thing in the 16-week semester context. Just turn it in on the last exam week. I want you to tell me what it was like to get the tour, who the person was, what their demeanor was. Did they answer your questions, or did they punt a lot? Like, I don't know. But if they knew, that's why you sort of hope that they're going to be a leader in that system. That's when you're dealing with somebody who's pretty authoritative in what they're teaching. Did they answer all your questions? Did your curiosity turn them off? Because there are some systems that say never challenge and never question. This is what we believe, fact. And they don't like to be confronted or asked. I'm not saying confronted in a bad way. What was their service like? Especially in comparison to what your context is. If you're from a country church or city church, there are some that have instruments, but very few. Sikh, they have music. The Baha'i, they have music. But for the vast majority of them, there's none. So you ask yourself, okay, well, what did it look like? What did it sound like? If they were lighting incense, again, Greek Orthodox, what was that like? Did it smell like a Bath and Body Works, or did it smell like an opium den? What was that like? Let's deal with this sitting separately. The reason I ask you to do that is because I want you to be intermingled. There'll be other people, as you're getting the tour, I'm sure they'll point out to you, hey, look, here, we got a visitor here. Awesome. And so if you're huddled together like 5 or 6, nobody usually likes to address that. Nobody likes to deal with that. But if it's just you, I think there's a lot of people that would walk up to you and start talking. Here's the final question. In a lot of these contexts, they're offering you not just a tour, not just the service, but they'll offer you the meal. Like in the context of Hinduism, they have an outdoor, like a Hindu Indian farmers market. Buddhism, they'll often serve you a meal. It's a guarantee. In the Gurdwara, they feed you. That's the Sikh system, always. And what's that like for you? Because we're dealing with the Apostle Paul, aren't we? What do you do with meat that's been sacrificed to idols? Anything you eat in an Islamic country, anything that you eat, operates by halal, the permissible foods, and haram. Looks like harm with an extra A, Haram. So it's been sacrificed to an idol. How do you deal with that? How do you work with that? And what was that like? The final part of the report would be the spiritual warfare part. Sort of hard to delineate and define what you deal with. But there are places where I feel absolute oppression. There are places where it feels absolutely too much. I get that. I want you to be prayed up when you go. But this is not too big for you. We have nothing to fear from the devil's questions. We have nothing to fear from other systems. And false gods can't respond. There's nothing that I enjoy more than going into the context of somebody else's system and presenting the gospel and finding a way to be in the middle of Mars Hill So I encourage you, study this, prepare for this. If you are by distance, let me know in the next section, the next block. Let me know which one you're going to be going to, and you and I will interact. I have all the books, and I'll be uploading all of them online for you to download for free. Because again, in our present day, they've got them everywhere. So it's not too hard, not too difficult. I promise you, this will give you sermon illustrations and lesson illustrations for the rest of your life. And it will be fun. And for me, it is one of those great challenges. 25 years later, my stomach still churns when we get ready for it. I love it. I love it. I adore it. And so for those of you that are in my classes, you know why we do it. You understand the worldviews collide. I love this. For those of you that are taking me by distance, welcome to my world. You'll be able to do this with others. So, to show me that you watched the video, I ask that you, because obviously it lets me know, but I ask that you respond in email or by text to my cell phone number and let me know that Souk, S-O-U-K, is the word I use for the outdoor market. Because that's what it is. It's the outdoor, it's the agora in the Greek. You can use either one. But let me know so I can mark this off.